it is entirely possible to learn a language for free. So, my name's Nick, and for the last 2.5 years, I've been studying Portuguese. And I've been doing that for free. And so I figured, it's probably about time that I shared some of my methods, and maybe you can see if any of them would work for you. So, I made a previous video where I talked about whether or not you should actually go about learning a language. So, if you're here and you're still unsure about whether or not you should learn a language, then maybe go ahead and watch that first, and then you can come back to this later on. But let's assume that you've decided that, you want to learn a language, but you're debating on whether or not you actually want to learn by taking a class or you want to learn by yourself. And so, taking a class, it costs a lot of money, which, at least in my case, living as a student, I don't really have. So, for me it just seems simpler to learn for free. But there are a couple of benefits to learning in a class. The first one is that you'll have a teacher, and that teacher will be able to guide you and help you with concepts that you're actually struggling with. And another one is the fact that you're taking a class, at least I would assume, you're taking a class with other people, and together you'll be able to stay motivated a lot easier and be able to give each other tips and such. It might be a fun way to challenge each other as well. The last one is that it might actually be a benefit, the fact that you're paying for a class, because that way you might feel like, I'm paying for this, I should probably make sure that I get my money's worth of learning. And thus, you'll be less likely to give up, because you've already spent money on it. But for those of you who don't necessarily want to spend a lot of money on it, at least in my case, I managed to do it basically for free with my own method. So, my method, it's free and it's not free at the same time. So, let me explain. Most of my studying uses my own interests. That means that since I enjoy watching movies, I enjoy reading, I enjoy playing video games, I'll just be doing that, but while playing or watching or reading in Portuguese, and thus I'll learn a language that way. So I told you that it was free, and it's not free. But here's the thing. So I know, for instance, books aren't free. You can find a lot of them online, but books in general aren't free. No, they cost money, but here's the thing. I enjoy reading, and I would have read in English or Norwegian, which is my native language, if I wasn't reading in Portuguese. Meaning, I would have spent that money anyway, and as a matter of fact, I would have probably spent a lot more. Just based on the fact that I would have read a lot quicker if I was reading in English or in Norwegian than I'm at least able to do at this point in Portuguese. But nevertheless, I would have spent money whether or not I was actually learning a language. And I just while I'm reading books in Portuguese, I just happen to be learning a language at the same time as I'm doing something that I really enjoy. And then same thing with movies. You're going to be spending a bit of money paying for some sort of streaming service, but you might as well watch content, as in films or series, in your target language instead of your native language. One thing I'll definitely recommend for doing that is please use Disney Plus. Now, I know that some people might disagree with me here, but it's just Disney Plus, while it doesn't have all the movies that Netflix has, it still has a massive library. For instance, I enjoy Marvel, it has that. I enjoy a lot of the old Disney classics, and it has that. And so that's basically sufficient for me. But the one thing that Disney Plus has that Netflix and other streaming sites really can't hope to match is that basically any movie that you find on Disney Plus will be dubbed to any language that you could possibly want to learn. Maybe not Japanese, I haven't really looked. Maybe not Japanese or Chinese. But at least for Japanese, you could probably just get by with using something like Crunchyroll instead. So maybe for Japanese, it might be better to use another streaming site. But at least for most other languages, you're going to be doing alright with Disney Plus. And then there are games. So there are two types of games that I would recommend for you to play if you want to learn a language. Those are online games. If it's a good online game, you'll be forced to interact with other people. And if you're forced to interact with other people, and you can actually manage to find people to interact with in your target language, then you'll be learning how the language is actually used. And then there is the other type of games. These are story-heavy games. So for instance, I'm currently trying to play through Undertale, and I'm trying to play through Ruined King. Both of those games are really story-heavy. And so if I want to enjoy it to the fullest, then I'll be forced to actually try to understand what you're saying in those games. So naturally, I end up learning a lot. One thing is, at least in Undertale, is heavily focused on sense of humor. And so you'll actually be learning a lot about that while learning as well, or while playing. So that is a really fun aspect to at least playing Undertale. And then, so those are 3 ways. And then you could also use YouTube for where you could look at content creators. You'll most likely, for anything that you're interested in, be able to find a content creator speaking your target language. And then you could also try learning something new, either through YouTube or just through looking up things on the internet. Whether that be dancing, or which is something that I would really like to learn, or something else. You could probably find some sort of guide, maybe a Skillshare, something else like that. You could probably find some sort of guide that will be able to teach you in your target language. And since you're learning something that you're actually interested in, you'll be that much more focused on actually understanding the tiny details, and therefore, you're going to be understanding or learning a lot in the new language. And as a side note, if you're using YouTube to learn, or if you're just using YouTube to watch content, you'll be learning just like you would when you're playing games online. You'll be learning how the language is actually spoken by native people. So those are the ways that I use, or the methods that I use to learn a new language. And then, but some people, they might look at at least for me, the one single con that I can think of, and that might be the fact that it's difficult to stay motivated. So I talked about how learning through a class has the benefit of you actually paying for it, meaning that you want to stay motivated. But if you're doing this and you're doing it correctly, I say correctly, there is no single correct way, or it's going to vary from person to person. But if you're doing this in the right way for you, then you shouldn't ever really get bored of it, and thus it becomes that much easier to stay motivated because you're actually doing stuff that you would do in your own native language. You're just doing it in another language. Just make sure that you're not actually forcing yourself to do it. You're still doing it the same way as you would if you weren't focused on learning from it. And you're still going to be benefiting a lot from it. So in terms of books and series and such, and what series and books are actually good to learn from if you're trying to learn a language, I'll probably be making a video on that at some point. And for those of you thinking that, that's all interesting and all that, but I'll probably still be looking into taking a language learning class. I'll also be working on a video for that. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, then feel free to stick along. That's it for today.